All right, so here we go. AOC, we can't stop talking about her, no matter how hard we try. She won't go away. And I've found a clip here. What's up with that? About a 3-minute clip, and I want you guys to listen to the ridiculousness of her rant. All right? Let's check it out.
We talk about cost. We're going to pay for this whether we pass a Green New Deal or not. Because as towns and cities go underwater, as wildfires ravage our communities, we are going to pay. And we are either going to decide if we're going to...
I hate stopping the speech, but if she knew anything about climate and its history, she would know that if she would look back into the 1920s and 30s, we had way more wildfires than what we're seeing right now, okay? The only reason why they don't seem as bad as what they were in the 30s is because we didn't have social media to report every time somebody farted.
Pay to react, or if we're going to pay to be proactive. And what we know is that prevention, when you spend less money on prevention, you can prevent a lot of that damage from happening in
You got that?
the first place. So it's not a question of whether we're going to spend the money, because I'm very sad to say that the government knew that climate change was real starting as far back as 1989 when NASA was reporting this.
Okay, so 1989, NASA was reporting increasing temperatures. NASA did not report global warming was man-made. That was made up by her fellow colleagues back when she was in diapers.
And the private sector knew way back in the 1970s. So we had until around the time I was born to address this issue. I wish it didn't have to cost so much. But I'm going to turn 30 this year, and for the entire 30 years of my lifetime, we did not make substantial investments to prepare our entire country for what we knew was coming.
Okay. I'm sure you've seen the reports. This woman actually answered a casting call. All right. I want you guys to watch her body language, how perfect it seems at times. And there's a reason for that. Again, she answered a casting call, and next thing you know, she is now a congresswoman.
So now it's coming all up at the end. It's like when we live our whole lives and we don't eat healthily and we don't move and we pursue unhealthy activities. And then at the end of our lives, our healthcare costs are very high. We have the choice to lower the cost now, because I can...
Okay, so basically your fat ass is causing healthcare rates to go up, you fat ass. Basically is what she's saying, you fat lazy ass. This person shouldn't even be allowed to speak anymore. She continues to make her party look even worse. Obesity is a problem in the United States, but let's face it, folks, there's all kinds of factors that go in with reasons why we have obesity. Maybe a lack of it is education of nutrition. Maybe there's also people out there who have real medical conditions that they cannot lose the weight no matter what they do or try. So I don't like how she sits here and read between the lines, folks. You lazy fat asses out there are the reason why that our health care is so high in the end of your lives. We got to pay for your lazy fat asses and all your problems because you're just a lazy fat ass. You don't move and you don't do any exercise. You lazy fat ass. That's what she's saying. Again, I just, to speak like that in general on obesity, there's so many factors out there. People's genetics are different. DNA is, thyroid issues are out there. Diabetes. Of course, a lot of people get diabetes from weight issues, but we don't know what leads to those weight issues in the first place. So I don't like the assumption that everyone who has a weight issue is just a lazy fat ass. I know a lot of people who work circles around me and are huge, and no matter what they do, they can't get rid of the weight. I know a gentleman right now who probably weighs 500 pounds almost, but busts his butt at work. And he's one of the top producers of this company. He's not lazy. He's at it every day, busting his ass, 10 hours a day. So, again, just more idiocracy from this woman.
Tell you the cost of pursuing a Green New Deal will be far less than the cost of not passing it. And with respect to our brothers and sisters and neighbors that are in agriculture, bring them to the table. Let's hold hearings. Let's add provisions. Let's amend the legislation to accommodate for the just transition and for the encouragement of those industries to grow. And I would also encourage to my colleague on the other side of the aisle that thinks we're trying to ban cows to actually read the resolution and understand that there's nothing to that effect in the legislation. And not only that, but we're trying to invest in these communities and our agricultural workers so that they can enjoy prosperity into the next century. We talk about
bunch of garbage there, bunch of regurgitated garbage that she's speaking on right now because she's an actress. She doesn't know what the hell she's talking about. Bring the farmers to the table. Let's get them in hearings. What are the farmers going to tell you? You bring the farmers to the table, they're going to expect a check when they walk out because right now, let's take a look at what's going on around. Okay, you want to try to play the heartstrings and bring up the farmers as part of the victim, and we got to do this for the. To me, it's like using the kids for the climate change and protesting by leaving school. Now we're gonna tug on the country's heartstrings because if you guys are paying attention, you know that the farmers are hurting the worst right now. So she's gonna hijack the emotions of real people who are actually really working, unlike her. All right. These guys are the reason why this country goes. Without food, we don't live. We don't survive. So trying to grandstand and politicize and try to paint this picture, let's get the farmers involved because they got the solution for climate change. Yeah, okay. If you believe that man has anything to do with climate change, I guess you're all for the Green New Deal. But if you're a skeptic at all, I'm not even saying a complete denier. If you're even a skeptic, well, then you're labeled a Marxist or a Stalinist because, you don't want to do anything to the atmosphere. I saw a commercial today from ExxonMobil talking about carbon capture technology and improving it and showing trees and talking about CO2 and how plants love it. And I'm like, yes, thank you. And why I'm saying that is because ExxonMobil is saying, hey, we burn fossil fuels, but we also want to do it responsibly. We want the air you breathe to be clean, and we want the drinking water you drink to be clean. I stand 100% on that side. Fossil fuels, yes. Safety, of course. Technology to capture the pollution, absolutely. Do I believe that pollution is impacting the climate? Absolutely not. And I hope that I've done a decent job of proving that case with you out there, the viewers. We've interviewed people like John Casey, Valentina Zarkova, David Dilley, Ralph Nitzwe. Oh my God, I just butchered his name, didn't I? Rolf, not Ralph. Witche. It's been a long day, guys. I'm a little upset right now because this little clip triggered me from her trying to play like, oh, the poor farmers. You're right. Do something about it. Don't use them for your political and popularity gain. Do something for these people. Let's start. All right. Here we go. Gainesville, Florida. Watermelon crop damage. Summer may not be the same this year. The powerful hailstorm hit Wednesday morning may have done significant damage to north central Florida's watermelon crop. When TV20 reporter Landon Haar got into the fields around 5 this afternoon, he said the hail was gone, but the effects will be felt for a long time to come. It says here, I knew that a potential scenario for significant damage. The aftermath was easy to see. If you look the dirt around the plants, you could see pock marks where the hail hit, and even plastic covering meant to keep young plants warm has small BB-sized tears in it. Hail isn't a new phenomenon for farmers to deal with, but this storm hit harder than most. Does not give us an exact number here. 40 acre field may come out as a total loss. He said it's probably roughly lost $100,000 invested into the field. Only time will tell if the young plants can bounce back. I won't know nothing about replanting until about Saturday. So 3 days, so tomorrow actually. It says here, a watermelon specialist for the northern Florida region told me this region produces roughly 1/3 of Florida's watermelon crop every year. 33%, folks. Roughly 7,000 acres in total. He says from listening to farmers today, at least half of the acreage has been impacted to some degree by the hailstorm. Not all is lost, but we're looking at a potential of a 50% crop loss in northern Florida, a part of the state that produces 1/3 of the watermelon crop. That number's about to go down. And then this number goes up. And I found this article, guys, and we'll leave the link later after the show. This doesn't tell you why the food prices are going up. The reason why I picked this article, I found it interesting because it said, well, we thought it was going to be only 0.7 cents, 0.7% estimated increase for food. But now they changed that tune to 2%. I love how they spell percent, by the way. It's adorable. But the thing that strikes me is that this article was kind of just leaked out there. I think this is a little read between the lines. We have an article that talks about the markets are going to go up for food costs. And this is before we start to see the real results of crop damage in the United States. So if they're already expecting it to be a certain point and it goes up even more, and the year really hasn't even started, guys, we could be talking about a lot higher number next year for food costs to go up. So I think they're being modest, but I wanted to point this article out because it's being talked about, food prices on the rise. And then, of course, this. This article says it all, folks. This March 19th, 2019, aerial photo shows flooding along the Missouri River, the Pacific Junction, Iowa. The U.S. Army Corps of Engineers says rivers breached at least a dozen levees in Nebraska, Iowa, and Missouri. This isn't even talking about South Dakota or North Dakota yet as well, including parts of Minnesota. It's time to freak out. Violent climate change is here now. The unthinkable has happened and will continue to happen. We have never seen catastrophic flooding like this. The scope of this historic disaster has touched nearly every aspect of Nebraska, says Colonel Michael Mannion, said in the early days as record floods devastated a wide swath of the farm belt across Iowa, Nebraska, South Dakota, and several other states. Stories and images have been surfacing showing the complete and utter chaos. Nebraska is in a chaos which quickly spread into other states. Early estimates of crop loss in livestock is approaching $3 billion, and that figure is expected to rise as flooding is now predicted to last well into May. The flooding on the fields will render them all but impossible to use. And that's just through May. That's not even including any other precipitation that we might have to come here in the near future. Fields that are normally used for growing beans, corn, and grain are under tons of snow or several feet of water. This means these fields will more than likely not produce a crop this year. That's right, folks. They're not expecting the crops to grow right now in the fields that have snowpack and water. They're not even saying, no, there's no chance. They're saying there's no chance. More than 200 million people in 25 states are at risk. Let me repeat this. More than 200 million people in 25 states are at risk. NOAA had warned. Now, we all know how I feel about NOAA. So for them to come through and actually admit that something's really bad like this, we better take a heed. We know how they like to cook the books. We know how they like to minimize certain activities and actions. Now, of course, they're going to run to the AGW microphone and say, global warming is causing the worst flooding in history of man. We have to act now. The Green New Deal is a must. We know better than that over here. It's an agricultural wipeout, which has very little to do with temperature and everything to do with increased precipitation in the form of snow or rain. It looked like an ocean from the early days. Governor Kim Reynolds warned Iowans that the snow melt and spring rains would create additional flooding in the weeks ahead because of compromised levees. So there's areas that are dealing with compromised levees, with snow on the ground that's still going to melt, creating more flooding. And on top of the rains that you get in this time of the year in this part of the country, are you kidding me? Global warming caused the snow, which is causing the floods. That's what they're going to say. I hear it now. Global warming caused all that snowpack this year. Now it's warm and all that snow is now water. Give me a break. Devastating flooding came at worst possible time for Midwest farmers. There is no denying that the weather, the actual climate, has been changing violently. I'm going to stop right here. I agree with this article, but I think they're pushing it a little too hard. We can't blame it on one specific thing, but we do know that there are a lot of correlations happening right now that we've already spoke about with cloud nucleation, cosmic rays, intense precipitation usually follows that as well. And if we look back in previous minimums and really deep minimums and grand solar minimums, we see record-breaking events because these solar minimums create a ripe environment for heavy precipitation. Now this gets interesting now. What needs to be explained is the dramatically increased precipitation, where the trend line is going. We have to turn to science for this. The astrophysics, which tell us that increasing cosmic radiation is seeding more clouds, causing more rain and snow, much more. One of the classic characteristics of grand solar minimum is increased cosmic rays, creating more cloud coverage and more precipitation. How great is this article find for me tonight? Because Mari has already discussed this as well. Increased cosmic rays causing cloud nucleation during grand solar minimums. Behind the Svensmark article. That is exactly what is happening, causing flooding, not just in the central and the eastern USA, but many other places around the world where flooding is killing people and destroying crops. It would already be an utter national nightmare even if the flooding was all over, but NOAA is informing us the nightmare is just beginning, with catastrophic flooding continuing for the next 2 months. 2 months! What's at stake? Food reserves lost. We have witnessed loss of massive stockpiles of wheat, corn, soybeans that have been stashed away as farmers hope for a price increase. According to the U.S. Department of Agriculture, as of December 1st, South Dakota, Nebraska, Kansas, Minnesota, Iowa, Missouri, Wisconsin, and Illinois had 6.75 billion bushels of corn, soybeans, and wheat stored on their farms. The amount of food that has just been lost is absolutely staggering. Due to the trade war, farmers were storing more wheat, corn, and soybeans than ever, and now the floodwaters have destroyed much of what has been stored. So future past production is being wiped out together. I don't know how to put it any other way. The reserves are being lost. The current production's being lost. Last year, we're still waiting for government financial aid for these farmers that lost crops last year. We talked last year about the pecan crop in Georgia. Trees that were uprooted. 7 years before those trees mature to produce again. 7 years. Those areas that were total loss are now going to have to wait for 7 years to make a penny back. So what's going to have to happen? Hopefully, government aid kicks in and helps these farmers get back on their feet for the next 7 years until they can provide for themselves once again. Hey, act of God. Nothing they can do about hurricanes ripping up their crops. Let's continue on. Economic effects. Before we even look at other agricultural disasters that are becoming disturbingly frequent, it is important to note that there are macroeconomic shocks associated with the infrastructure damage. Agricultural losses commodity price spikes caused by droughts, floods, hurricanes amplified by climate change, according to Glenn Rudebush of San Francisco Fed's executive vice president, meaning climate change could spur financial crisis. True. Climate change can. Absolutely. Just not man-made. If one reads the mass media, will not be alarmed at what is happening in the belly of America, even though huge parts of many states are suddenly underwater. Let me repeat. If one reads the mass media, one will not be alarmed at what is happening in the belly of America, even though huge parts of many states are suddenly underwater. Suddenly meaning, yeah, the temperature melting the snow, causing the floods. Here we are. It's not being reported enough. We already talked to you guys about the olive oil catastrophe. 1.13 billion euros. They're possibly going to have to import olive oil in Italy. Climate change and potato apocalypse. Say that really fast. After a devastating potato growing season, 500 million pounds of Canadian potatoes are feared wasted. 500 million pounds of Canadian potatoes are feared wasted, and many of the survivors are misshapen, undersized, threatening to turn French fries to short and brown. Mini fries. United Potato Growers of Canada announced they suffered a trifecta of bad weather across the country. You ain't kidding. Late spring, hot summer, cold fall saw an estimated 6,000 hectares abandoned. United Potato Growers General Manager Kevin McIsaac said, I've been involved in the industry myself for 25 plus years. I've never seen anything like this. It's pretty bad right now. Dramatic climate change everywhere. Scenes like this are becoming sadder, not just here in Mexico. Australia lost thousands, hundreds of thousands of livestock this year. They talk about it here in this article as well. After record-breaking floods, as producers said, more than 300,000 cows were drowned or washed away in the vast continent's northeast, talking about the Australia floods. The number of estimated dead is now 500,000 dead cows. In America, it was not the flooding that did the cows in, but the heavy snowfall, gale force winds, extreme cold hit multiple dairying regions in Idaho and Washington in midwinter, leaving nearly 2,000 dead. Dairy farmers who have been in the business their entire lives said they have never seen anything like it. So potato farmers never seen anything like it. Dairy farmers never seen anything like it. Here we go. Conclusions. Very important part of this article, my favorite part. Climatologist Judith Curry is rocking climate change zealots. In her latest paper, Ms. Curry found that the current rising sea levels are not abnormal, nor can they be pinned on human-caused climate change, arguing that the oceans have been on a slow creep for the last 150 years before the post-1950 climb in CO2 emissions. Greenland's biggest glacier, which we talked about earlier, began advancing rapidly, almost 26 feet per day. In 2016, airborne and satellite imagery, that glacier is advancing about 1.8 miles, and the ice is thickening nearly 130 feet annually, according to NASA. So all you folks out there who think Greenland's ice is melting, it's advancing about 1.8 miles and thickening nearly 130 feet per year. It's pretty intense. And that's according to a study published in Nature Geoscience. Link is in that article as well. It is very hard to see the North Pole full of ice and hear about the Northern Hemisphere being the biggest glacier growing, and no doubt the global warming hysteria. Again, it is very hard to see the North Pole full of ice and hear about the Northern Hemisphere biggest glacier growing and not about the global warming hysteria. Yet hotter or colder, the climate is changing. It's getting colder, hotter in some places, more snow, more rain, more floods, more drought, more big stones, more of everything, including glacier ice. In this time of dramatic climate change, we also have volcanoes exploding and more earthquakes, also predictable from past periods of climate change in conjunction with, that's right folks, grand solar minimum. This is basic foundation stuff that we learned from John Casey. It does not matter what you believe in the end. No one can ignore the fact that we are experiencing a grand solar minimum and a violent change or a climate change that goes with it. It can be ignored, but not denied. In February, we did not have one sunspot. Solar activity is declining, and for sure, we know it's not from too much CO2. So, this person did a very good job putting this piece together, coldclimatechange.com. He also did a good job of spelling it out. And yeah, he gets a little fiery here. It's time to freak out. Violent climate change is here now! Exclamation mark. The unthinkable has happened and will continue to happen. Why is this guy so upset? Why is he so freaked out? I think the stats that we just read to you should be enough. The footage.
Hi, folks.
Everywhere. This is the stuff that we weren't expecting. No one talked about this kind of flooding. We talked about the record snow, and we started to, hey, where's that snow melt going to go? We started to talk about it a little bit, but I don't think anybody realized the big picture here. And we got to deal with Colorado still, guys. You say 144% above its normal snowpack?
144. Right?
Yep.
I made the elbow chart.
So, Denver's getting 1 to 3 inches right now as we speak. Snow. Still. So, Miss Cortez, the next time you want to use the farmers as a tool in your plot, I think you need to understand how disrespectful you're being right now. When I read off what I've just read off about the state of our agriculture and how serious it is, how farmers across the United States, they're losing last year's reserves and this year's surplus and the current production. And oh, by the way, where is the latest weekly crop report? This is dated from the 17th through the 23rd. Today's the 29th. And looking at this is alarming. They're not even talking about how many days it's going to take before they can get into the fields to work. Look at this one, guys. Look at that. This is the top scale here is what we are currently drought right now. This is the current drought monitor, which I think that is actually going to show differently as well soon. This is the outlook. Almost non-existent. But yet California, by the way, there's not a spot on that map in California for drought. Unreal. But again, guys, we don't have the latest on the farm report yet. And we haven't seen reports yet on how many days until these farmers can start working in the fields. And that's alarming, because I remember this time last year we were starting to talk about it. So we'll see as we go into April. Guys, stick around. We'll be right back. We'll get into a weather article, and then I'll take a look at our GFS weather outlook. Stay tuned.
Do you like this show? Give us a thumbs up. Want to support us more? Share to your favorite social media platform. Buy a t-shirt or become a Patreon. All links are in the description below.